Oh, yes.
Siemens persuaded Brightline not to use cab-controlled cars, but to use locomotives predominantly for grade crossing safety reasons. What's different here?
Siemens didn't have, when they were doing Brightline, didn't really have a design for cab coach equipment. And it was sort of it's been in development for years, and it wasn't ready. Now they have a design that is endeavoring to be NGEC compliant, Next Generation Equipment Committee specifications compliant, have the latest crash energy management to address those issues. Metra and all kinds of commuter rail agencies and many other passenger they use cab coach cars today. This will have crash energy management unlike those, and it will also has space between where the cab is and where the revenue seating is. So I think it is a pretty robust. It's being designed in a pretty robust way. Oh yes, sorry.
How much does Wisconsin or Amtrak have to pay the Canadian Pacific to use their track?
So Amtrak, Wisconsin doesn't contract directly with Canadian Pacific at all, or the states don't. So it all goes through Amtrak, and what Amtrak pays them are incremental maintenance of way payments based on trips, like trip rates. There's no access fees, of course, because of the 1971 Act, which granted Amtrak access on all the freight railroads. Commuter rail operations have to pay an access fee. Amtrak doesn't, but they do pay that incremental maintenance of way. That is, let me see if I can, what our host railroad payments are.
I heard something like 19 million from Roundabout up to Minneapolis, St. Paul.
That sounds a bit high. Ours, for the Hiawatha, it's based on a trip rate, and its totals about in the range of like $1 million or a little more. And I don't have the exact numbers on. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I can get that for you. But there's also incentive payments. Right. So in addition to the incremental maintenance away costs, Amtrak pays incentive payments for on-time performance, which are significant. And the contracts between the different host railroads vary. They could be totally different with each host railroad. Let's see.
Take 2 steps in. With all these projections about the traffic, the high-end environmental tours going up 50,000 cars a day, 150,000 to 200,000 by 2034. You talk about these projections. Anybody considering these warnings from climatologists that we don't do something about CO2 emissions within the next 8 to 10 years, we're going to be beyond the ability? Now, I would think that would be a benefit for passenger rail service, where you get public mass transportation that would cut down on CO2 emissions. But does that enter into these models when they're starting to make these projections that there's going to be a lot more automobiles on I-94? Is that ever considered the climate issues?
Well, that's kind of it's become sort of a political discussion there. But when we're talking about passenger rail, I think that definitely should be part of the discussion and incorporated into that. Yeah. It's huge. It's yeah, and the particulate emissions and it's amazing, and you can actually see the difference between the Tier 0 or whatever the P42s are, and it's striking. And the particulate emissions, I think it's 90% less than the traditional locomotives.
just seems
So
like
this-
that would be a major advantage. Should be pushy, but that,
Yeah.
I don't think people take it seriously. But it seems like it should be a major advantage.
Yep.
Passenger rail service, but the fact that we lower emissions, lower CO2.
Yes.
With the integrated schedules between Milwaukee, St. Louis, and Detroit, are they entertaining the idea of the run-throughs again? Because those were really
Yeah.
nice. It really was, because sometimes detraining and reboarding in Chicago is not always a pleasant task.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because you're on opposite ends of the, you have two opposite concourses there, and now that they're boarding way out in the Great Hall, because they're so overcrowded there,
Mm-hmm.
I would think that that would be a real advantage, is just keeping those people on the train and using the run-through track.
I would love to see that. And with the 7-round trips right now, those 7-round trip slots, we couldn't do it today without introducing a third set of Hiawatha equipment because of where each set of equipment needs to be. But with the 10-round trips, we're looking at potentially incremental improvements going to 8 or 9 or 10. If we go to 8, the solution to that is to bring a St. Louis train in to run a midday run of the Hiawatha and run out. And that is an opportunity where we could have a run-through, potentially a run-through St. Louis train.
I have family in St. Louis, I have had for years, and so I used to use that. That really was nice, that you never didn't have to get off in Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yes, I think you had your hand up.
What would it take to get Madison back into the plan, or to at least have a bus connection at Columbus to the Amtrak building?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's all it takes. We all know that.
Is there more to it?
The
than
DOT
that?
has
What-
plenty of money, they could start tomorrow. But it takes political will.
I'm-
It's up to you
yeah.
to write to every single person who represents you politically and say, that's what I want.
Yeah, from a technical perspective, of course, the improvements that were in that project were for extending the Hiawatha was a double track between Pewaukee and Watertown on the CP, and then major improvements to the Watertown to Madison Waco WSOR state-owned line that has a few freight trains on it today. There's some significant improvements there. And then for the Empire Builder, the throughway shuttle service, it's, boy, we've been, that one has been a tough nut to crack because of the Empire Builder schedule and reliability. It's very difficult. You'd have to have a dedicated shuttle that can go and sit there and wait for hours and then come back. And we have a state-supported intercity bus route that stops there from Madison to Columbus to Green Bay. But we haven't been able to utilize that in both directions for that purpose because of the reliability issues. Still working on it. Of course, if this second Empire Builder frequency TCMC service goes forward, that will definitely open up opportunities and address that. I think, Nona, did you have a...
No, it wasn't important.
Okay.
Oh, no, I know, I had a question. It was, when will you know about the applications? What's the date that you would expect to hear back?
So,
Equipment acquisition application?
for the first round of applications, soon. I think there is a rule or policy that they don't announce things 5 weeks before an election on a federal level.
Feel their
So probably not in the next 2 weeks, but soon on the first round, and probably relatively soon in the next few months on the second round as well. I think it's going to go pretty quickly. Yes.
Going back to that question about getting the train through Madison, and somebody said, well, all it takes is political will. Now, what about, I read sometime in the past, Minnesota finished the study on high-speed rail from Milwaukee to the Twin Cities, and of the 24 alternatives, they chose the existing Amtrak route through Columbus. And what I read, which of course was written by a journalist, is that that any federal funds, if they ever were available for this project, would have to go to the route that was identified by this study completed by Minnesota, who is really not interested in service to, through, or from Madison. They want service to Chicago. Is that true?
Well, no, I don't think that's true, that Minnesota doesn't, I haven't heard that statement. I mean, I don't know.
Actually, no, the part I was asking the truth of was whether
whether
federal funds ever
yeah,
became available,
yeah.
like another 800 some million dollars landed in our laps.
Yeah.
Could we then say, oh, but we actually want to go through Madison and Columbus?
I don't think, so the environmental clearance of that particular route would make that eligible for federal funding. But you can alter that by doing a supplemental environmental, looking at, you can go back and look at other adjustments to it. So it's not like, it's not set in stone. If there is a desire by the state sponsors to go back and make adjustments to it, a supplemental can be done to change that. Did want to just usually give an intercity bus update of any key issues that are going on. Greyhound last week pulled out of the Milwaukee to Green Bay I-41 service. So as a result, what we have left here is Fox Cities to Milwaukee, Appleton, Oshkosh, Fond du Lac. We have one round trip daily with lamers. You can connect from Green Bay to you can go from Green Bay to Appleton and connect in Appleton on that one round trip. So you technically can. That does go from Green Bay, but it requires a transfer in Appleton. And we also have so Green Bay to Milwaukee on I-43 via Sheboygan and Manitowoc, 2 round trips, provided by one by Jefferson Lines and then one by Indian Trails. So this is this really, this is a corridor with 500,000 people on it. It's a densely populated corridor, and this is a mishmash. We have a 7 round trip reliable Hiawatha service in Milwaukee to Chicago that can connect the Fox Cities, Green Bay to Chicago via a throughway bus service. But it's really a mishmash, and we'll see what happens if another carrier picks up that Greyhound round trip. But we are in discussions with Amtrak. We notified Amtrak about this, and to see if there's any interest in doing something, Amtrak doing something here. In terms of throughway bus service and a more higher frequency, better throughway bus service. And that might be in cooperation with Lamers. Maybe Lamers will pick up some of that. Yes?
Are the Fox City, those 2 routes that are still operating, or 2 corridors, is that coordinated throughway? I mean, if you buy a ticket in Appleton, can you actually buy an Amtrak ticket in Appleton?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, all of those 3 are
in California.
Yeah.
On an Amtrak.
So all of those 3 routes there listed are on the Amtrak system. Just for that Green Bay, when I mentioned you have to the Lamers, Green Bay to Appleton, transfer in Appleton to Milwaukee, that Green Bay stretch of Lamers is part of the Green Bay to Madison route. So what they do is they can ticket from Green Bay to Milwaukee that way, and they do a transfer. Yes.
When I hear about this Appleton bus change, I cringe. I'm assuming it's just like our wonderful Madison Intercity Bus Terminal, which is Langdon Street, and there are many connections in theory that you could make there, but no one would ever try that in real life because you don't have a bus station anymore.
I know the city of Madison was looking into that. They had a study going on. They were looking at a Lake Street ramp redevelopment and making it and doing it as part of that. And but that's kind of been pushed off in the budget, in the budget, city budget. Oh yeah, Keith, I think you're second. Yep.
The three lamers lines to Green Bay and Dubuque, are those subsidized by the state or federal government? Are they self-supporting?
All of those are state supported through the WisDOT intercity bus program 5311. Federal 5311. I don't know the amount, but I think it covers 50% of the operating. But that Jefferson lines is coming from Minneapolis-St. Paul, the one that's going on I-43, and across Highway 29, Wausau. And that the other one on I-43, the Indian Trails, of course, is coming from Houghton, Hancock area. Oh, yes.
Just a little historical point, talking about Green Bay to Chicago. In the entire Chicago and Northwestern system, the Green Bay to Chicago was always the heaviest. It was the heaviest.
That doesn't surprise me, yeah.
Entire system. Periodically, always those streamliners, many times were 14 cars.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, zip, sir.
Well, I noticed, but I was in the Amtrak station yesterday, they had 4 Amtrak clerks, but as the Greyhound counter was shut down.
Oh, in Milwaukee?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know whether I don't know whether the people are buying their tickets on the bus or whatever, but it seems like Greyhound doesn't want passengers either.
Mark?
I was just curious, did Greyhound give reasons as to why they were dropping the service?
No.
Okay. I've noticed problems with Greyhound. There's been many occasions where they come into Eau Claire and the drivers don't stop or they forget to stop. It's just total disorganization.
All right. I think that's it. Any other questions or comments? Yep.
I just would like to get your opinion. The other day, Keith and I met with the guy that's the new guy in head of transportation in Madison. We got to talking about the intermodal station in Milwaukee, and he said he heard it was a total failure. He said it was a failure because the bus companies didn't want to pay anything to stop at that intermodal station. Now, that's part of the problem I think we have in Madison is bus companies don't want an intermodal station because they don't want to have to be told where to go or have to pay for it. Is that?
Well, I think in Milwaukee that was initially the issue, but now that they've come around, Megabus is now stopping in the station, in one of the stalls in the station, as is Coach USA, Wisconsin Coach Lines, the Airport Express. So really you have everything now, all the buses in the intermodal station, Badger as well. So it's actually very good. Badger's in there. And Badger is actually now an Amtrak Thruway service from Madison.
Which gives you probably 30 daily alternatives to get from Madison by an Amtrak ticket to Chicago, with all of the Van Gelder buses plus all of the Badger buses and Amtrak trains.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good system.
Yes.
So would a new train or a train from Milwaukee to Madison be more possible, let's say, if the governor were in favor of that sort of thing?
Well, I won't. I'll just refer. I'll leave that to others to answer. Nona, you're good. Nona, you're good at answering those. Can you bail me out? Okay. Okay. Thanks. Thank you.